Mitch, and we had a council that was new, and I wanted to tell a few funny stories about Glenn, and I understand that now's my chance to speak because this is the only time that Mike gets to tell me when to speak. So, okay, so he says I have to speak now, which is maybe not the most appropriate time to do this, but I'm going to. Okay, 2 minutes, so I'm gonna do it. So I want to tell a funny story about Glenn, and I really don't have funny stories about Sam. I asked him, Sam, do you have any funny stories for me? And he didn't come up with any, but I'm going to think about it while I'm talking. So the first thing I want to say about Glenn is that Glenn taught me about democracy, transparency, accountability, and how to be a VIP. That's what Glenn taught me. And I have stories about all these issues, but I have one that goes back to 1991. Shall I tell the story, Glenn? Do you know what I'm going to talk about? Okay, so when Glenn is very big into technology, as you know, he's like a real techie, and he loves technology. So as soon as he got on council, he says, we have to have cell phones. Do you remember? Okay. So we didn't have cell phones as councillors, and Glenn gets on council, he says, we must have cell phones. So the mayor at the time was not too keen on this, but he said, okay, if you young people want to have cell phones, okay, we'll go for it. So we decided to go for the cell phones, but we voted on it in camera behind closed doors. And at the time I was very, shall we say, how do you put that? Not naive, but more idealistic. And I said, we can't, we can't vote on it behind closed doors. And I said, how can you vote on cell phones? You want to communicate with your public, but you don't want to take the decision to buy the cell phones. So you don't even want to give them your phone numbers. You don't even want them to know that you have cell phones. So we had this debate going back and forth until finally one day, we voted on it, and then of course there was a headline, the Suburban Council votes on cell phones behind closed doors. So, do you remember that, Glenn? Yes, okay. And then after that, Glenn became a great proponent. She says, no more voting behind closed doors. And every time we used to have a closed door meeting, Glenn would go out the next meeting and say, oh, by the way, at the last meeting, we voted on such and such behind closed doors. So that was the first lesson in democracy and transparency from Glenn. Then I went to a Yom HaShoah commemoration, and I sat in my usual place, sat in the middle of the audience, and Glenn comes up to me and he comes running and he says, Dida, he says, you have to sit in the front. He says, you're a VIP now. He says, you can't sit in the back. And so I got my second lesson. And going forward, tree walking tours, Jane's walks on Meadowbrook, FCMs in Halifax and Banff and Vancouver, shuttle buses, EMS, we ran to Quebec City to save EMS. That was a great achievement, Glenn. I mean, that was one of the best. So I think that throughout the years, you've taught me a lot about all these things, and I really appreciated it and always was very grateful for your support on all the issues that were important to me. Yes, my time is up. So Sam, I need some funny stories about Sam, but I'm going to think about it, and Mike maybe will give me another 30
I have a funny story about Sam, but I'll save it.
Go for it.
No, I'll save it. I'm going to save it. Can we let Manny talk?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much. We're now going to let Manny Young say a few words, and he'll stick to the 2 minutes.
A few words. By the way, did everybody get a ticket for the door prizes? There's 30 of them, so there's going. Also, I want to suggest that you sign up here for